Okay, now we're moving into Chapter 1, Level 3. So I'm going to double click on the file. And this time we're doing a budget. This is not just a material cost for the actual pair the shoes, but more a marketing and administration type budget to see how much money we can get out of the sale of the shoes. So if you'll recall from the last couple of videos, we had a $50.15 material cost for the actual shoes. No, we're not using the fancy ones, the options that we saw. We're not using the textured leather one or the high top. We're just using the original shoe at $50.15. Now that's the cost of the materials. However, to build a shoe actually costs $7.33 in labor to actually build one shoe, and then there's an overhead cost. Now the overhead cost is something in accounting that takes into account the fact that it costs you money for the taxes on the building, costs you money for the washrooms, the heat, the cooling, the electricity, the rent of the space, all that kind of stuff. And they've come up with a cost of 25%, which is sitting up here, as a proxy or an estimate for the cost of overhead. So the accountants figure these things out. They say, okay, the direct labor is $7.33 for a pair for one shoe, and we're going to charge ourselves 25% of the cost of direct labor for the overhead involved with actually building the shoe. All right, and so if we add them all up like this, if we add them all up, you'll see the cost of each shoe is $59.31. But there's more to it. We have to actually sell the shoes, which cost $5 per shoe or $10 a pair. So if I highlight them all here, we're up to $64.31 in costs for one shoe. Obviously, that's times 2 to get one pair sold, which is $109 thereabouts. All right. Now, in this particular scenario, you'll notice it says TZ Edge quarterly budget, and the quarterly budget refers to the first 3 months of the fiscal year, typically January, February, March. And they think that they're going to sell 1,000 pairs if it's priced at $200. If the price goes up to $225, then they're going to sell 750 pairs. And if the price goes higher at $250, then it's going to go down to 350 pairs. So this is very normal economics, very normal business practice, that as you increase your price from 200 to 250, the volume of sales per pair actually goes down. And this is fairly normal in the business world, and you probably experienced or have had an inclination about it yourselves when you've considered buying stuff. If the price is lower, then there's a tendency to buy. If the price is higher, then a tendency not to buy. So that's normal. So what we're going to try and do here is figure out the profitability, or what we call projected earnings down at the bottom here, based on this scenario: the low price scenario, the medium price scenario, and the high price scenario for the first quarter. We're also going to have estimates for the sales for the remaining quarters of the year. So that's down here in a tab called Volume Estimates. And what this shows here is that in quarter 1, there's our 1,750 and 350, which I showed you just earlier at the particular prices. Quarter 2 has these volumes based on the pricing. Quarter 3 has these volumes based on the pricing, and quarter 4, getting into the Christmas season, the volumes go up quite a bit based on the pricing. So the question that we have is, what should we price this at? Should we price it at $200, $225, or $250 in order to maximize profits? All right, that's what we're trying to figure out. And that's what you're going to be doing when you're in the real business world, trying to sort it all out as to what is the optimal price. So let's go back to the sheet here. What we're going to do here is we're going to figure out the actual costs of building the shoes and then come up with a profitability down at the bottom. But before we do that, we have to figure out the sales value. Very simply, it is basically the volume, all right, times the cost of the shoes. All right, so I'm going to go down to this cell here that I'm pointing at, which is CE8, and I'm going to go equals the cell that is 3 above, which is C5, times the cell that is 2 above, the $200. So there's your formula there, C5 times C6, till it gives us a total number of sales, which is $200,000. I want to repeat this on the following cells, the cells beside it. So I grab my little nubby here, pull it over, and remember the nubby, all it does is follow the pattern, which is the number that's 3 above times the number that's 2 above. Or if you look at the formula, D5 times D6. Pulling the nubby again, it follows the pattern, and there's the sales under that scenario. So obviously the sales are high for the low priced one because we got more volumes of more pairs of shoes being sold versus the higher price at $250 and the 350 pairs being sold. All right, but that's not the end of the story. We have to figure out the costs that we're incurring in order to sell stuff. Remember, no businesses can survive without having expenses as part of the process of selling. You have to buy to sell. So what we've got here is our $50.15, which you remember from the last couple of videos. And now we're going to start to create some formulas that take the 1,000 pairs, all right, and then we have to figure out the costs. So remember, this is on a cost per shoe basis though, and so we have to take all these numbers and multiply it by 2. So equals, so there's your first formula here, equals $50.15 multiplied by 1,000 pairs, and each pair is made up of 2 shoes. So multiply by number of shoes per pair, sitting on B1. So it's 3 parts to the formula. The cost of materials for 1 shoe times the number of pairs, that's 1,000, but each pair actually has 2 shoes, so this should be 2,000. So we do that by multiplying by 2. And then I press enter, and it comes back with $100,000 and $100,300. All right. Now remember what I just said up here about patterns. All right. So we want to minimize the amount of effort in dragging the little nubby thing here and dragging it across the various cells to actually automatically calculate. But as you see, it's a bit of a mess. So I'm going to undo this. And the reason it's a bit of a mess is because it's following the pattern religiously, just as you've told it. And that is, in this formula, take the cell to the left and multiply by the cell that is up here in this location, and then multiply by the cell that's in this location. So if I was to move this little nubby thing, say, to the right here, it does exactly that. Multiply by to the left, by the thing that's in this position, by the thing that's in this position. All right, there's nothing in that position. And then if we do it again further, and we move it across to this position, it says, basically I'll follow the pattern, just like you told me, the one to the left times the one above here, which is okay, and then the thing over here, which is the TZ Edge text. So it's a mess. So the idea now is to nail things down. So I'm going to nail down certain cells that I do not want to move with the pattern. So I'm going to say I do not want the $50.15 to move. So I go up to my B11 here, I click anywhere on that B11, and I press my F4 key. So here I am pressing it right now. Click. And you'll see it puts $sign in front of B and a $sign in front of 11. That means nailing down that actual cell reference, so it does not move with the pattern. Same with B1. I want to nail that down so it doesn't move, so press F4 once. Now I do want this C5 to move. All right, I do want it to move so that if I put it in the position to the right, then it looks at this one here. And if further along to the right, it looks at this position here. So I do want certain pattern movement to be done. When you put $signs around any part of the cell, then it's called absolute referencing. Absolute meaning just absolutely keep that cell there, that reference there, and do not move with the pattern. Whereas relative referencing is where there's no $signs, where it's relative movement according to the pattern. I'm going to press enter, and now I'm going to drag the little nubby thing over to the right hand side here. This time the $75,000 is correct. I'm looking at this cell here times this cell here times this cell over here. All right, I've told those the 2 and the $50.15 not to move with the pattern, and so it hasn't. All right, you'll see it's working, but the D5 does move with the pattern because I didn't nail anything down. Same with this one here. All right. Now the problem though is that I want to just drag this down the way as well. All right, I want the pattern to be repeated to a certain extent, but not others. For example, here in this spot here, notice I've got $20,060. It is looking at C6. See the C6 up here? Right here. It's It's looking at $200. Let's go back to the formula. The B1 is fine. We're good with that. That can stay there. And then we're also looking at B11, this one right here, when in fact it should be looking to the one to the left, that one right there. So I'm going to go back to this thing again. I'm going to blow these away, delete. And I'm going to say, well, what do you absolutely have to be fixed to, but still allow the rows to be part of the pattern? So I'm going back up to my B11 here. I'm going to press F4 once again. And I'm going to press it again. You see how it rotates. See, I keep pressing it, and now it's back to a relative, not absolute in any way. Watch my mouse up there, right? Watch where I'm pointing. And then B11 is relative referencing. Now we got absolute. Now we got absolute row. Now we got absolute column. Now we got nothing. No absolute. It's all relative. All right. So I want to nail down the column. So I find it, nail down the column. So $B, but not the row. I'm going to press enter. Okay. I also want to go up to the C5 here. The C5 has to be nailed down to a certain extent. I want the actual 5 to be nailed down. All right. So the 5. I want the row to be nailed down so it does not move, but I want it to go to D and E when I need it. So I'm pressing my F4, and I've nailed down the row with a $sign in front of it, and that's fine. Press enter. So let's try this. I'm now going to touch this. I'm going to pull it down 1. Does this work? It's now looking at B12, right, and C5, which is there, the 1000, and the B1. Let's move it over to the right now. Let's move it over here. Oops, sorry. Touch it, pull it over to the right. There we go. Does it work? It is looking at B12, right? Because I nailed down the column. It's not going to move over to the C column. It's also looking at D5, which is the one up here. And it's also looking at the B1. All right, so what we've created here, I'm just going to delete this. What we've created in this cell here is a multifunctional formula that can be copied through almost all the cells down here without having to go through the angst of dollarizing or absolutizing stuff individually. I can move this over here like this, and I can move it down like this, like that, and it works. All right, let's check an example here. We'll fix up these subtotals in a second, but basically if I take this 350 here, $3,500, look at the formula. It goes B16, which is correct, selling price per shoe, times E5, which is 350, which is correct, times the B1. Let's take a look at this one. It's looking at the overhead on B13 multiplied by D5 multiplied by B1. All right. Now these ones here in the middle here are just I'm just deleting that, and then this one here, it's looking at a B14, which is nothing. All right, you see that? It's nothing. There's nothing here. But if I was to add up these numbers here above the 50, the 7, the 1, and the $1.83 to this to a number that would not make it blank, then these will kick in. These are dashes because it's multiplying by a 0 right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly sum that. Press enter, and you will see how now it kicks in properly. All right. The other way you can do that is you can elect not to use the formula for that if that's a little confusing for you. You can just say, you know what, I just want to add up these 3 numbers here, subtotal, auto sum it. Okay, press enter. There's your 118 again, and then just drag her across. There we go. All right. So now let's look at the projected earnings. Well, that's very simple. Equals the sales minus the cost of goods sold, meaning the material cost, minus the selling price, 10,000. Press enter. So it comes back with $71,000 as the profits in the first quarter using low pricing and receiving a volume of 101,000 sales. So if I take my 71,000 now and then I drag her across, you'll see now what happens. Well, lo and behold, the lowest price one, the 200, is not the highest profits. The one at 225 provides the highest profits, provides about $1,000 more in overall profits. So bear that in mind, that it's not just an obvious answer in the business world as to how to optimize your pricing and volume. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to stop the video and then I'm going to move on to part 2, okay, of this particular level 3 chapter 1. So I'm stopping and I'll come back in a bit.